I found an old diary from the 1800s. Now I'm being followed by the person who wrote it. It all started one evening when I was cleaning out some old boxes in my attic. Among all the forgotten things, I stumbled upon a dusty old diary that had clearly seen better days. When I opened it, I didn't expect much, just some ancient handwriting, maybe a story of someone long gone. But what I found in those pages was more than I bargained for. The diary detailed my life, my future, things I hadn't even done yet. But here's the catch. The entry stopped abruptly, and the last one said, "I'm watching you." Now, strange things are happening around me, and I can't shake the feeling that someone is following me, someone who knows everything about my life. And I have no idea how this person is connected to the diary, but they're getting closer. It was just another typical Saturday afternoon. I was up in the attic, sorting through boxes of old things that had belonged to my grandparents. They had recently passed, and I was trying to clear out their house. As I was going through a dusty leather-bound box, I found something that caught my attention, an old diary, its cover cracked and worn from age. I carefully opened it, expecting some dry, forgettable story about my ancestors. But what I saw was different. The handwriting was from the 1800s, and the entries weren't just random musings. They were detailed accounts of my life, my childhood, my family, and events that hadn't even happened yet. The first few pages described events I had never known. A picnic with my friends when I was 12, a secret spot I used to visit in the woods, and the house we lived in when I was younger. I thought it was a strange coincidence. But then, the entries started getting more personal. The diary began describing things that hadn't happened yet, things I was planning to do, things no one could have known. For instance, there was a section written just days before my 25th birthday, and it described exactly what I was planning to do that weekend. There was even a specific mention of a song I had planned to play at my birthday party. It seemed too accurate to be a coincidence. But the last entry, written in frenzied handwriting, stopped me cold. It read, "I'm watching you." I dropped the diary and looked around the attic. The silence was deafening. But that sentence kept echoing in my mind, and I couldn't shake the feeling that someone, was watching me. The next few days were a blur. I couldn't get the diary out of my head, and I kept thinking about that final entry. What did it mean? Was it just some sick joke? Or had someone been secretly watching my every move? But then, it started getting real. The day after I found the diary, I went to work. When I walked into the office, there was a new employee, a woman who seemed oddly familiar. She was standing near the coffee machine, and when I walked past her, she gave me a knowing look, like she had been waiting for me. I didn't think much of it at first, but later, during a lunch break, I heard her talking to a coworker. The way she was describing my recent weekend plans, the ones written in the diary, was uncanny. She even mentioned the same song I was planning to play at my birthday party. I tried to shake it off, thinking I was just being paranoid. But something wasn't right. This woman wasn't just coincidentally talking about things that were private to me. She knew intimate details, things only I should have known. Later that evening, I found her standing outside my apartment building, staring up at my window. She quickly turned when she saw me and disappeared down the street. My heart started racing. The next few days felt like a blur. Every time I left my house, I was looking over my shoulder, wondering if she would be there. The woman from the office kept showing up in unexpected places, outside my apartment, on the street where I walked, even across the street from my favorite coffee shop. She never approached me directly, but I could feel her eyes on me, and I could sense her presence before I even saw her. One night, I decided I needed to take control of the situation. I took the diary with me to the local coffee shop and sat in the corner, trying to read the rest of it. I needed answers, but every time I tried to focus on the pages, my mind kept drifting back to the woman. It was like she was following me, watching my every move. I looked up from the diary and nearly choked on my coffee. There she was again, standing by the door of the coffee shop, looking directly at me. She wasn't even pretending to be inconspicuous this time. She just stood there, staring at me with that same unnerving, knowing look. I stood up abruptly, knocking my coffee cup over. The woman didn't move. She just watched. I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my bag, slung it over my shoulder, and practically ran out of the coffee shop, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't look back, but I could feel her eyes on me, like a weight pressing on my back. Over the next few days, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was seriously wrong. The diary was getting more and more disturbing. Each entry felt like a personal attack. It was as if the person who wrote it knew everything about my life, where I would go, who I would meet, even what I would be thinking. But the strangest thing was how the entries began to include things that hadn't happened yet. The diary even mentioned specific events I hadn't told anyone about. I found an entry dated just days before the most recent encounter with the woman at the coffee shop. It read, "She will approach you soon. Do not confront her. She is a part of it. She knows what you've discovered. You're being watched." I slammed the diary shut. How could this be happening? It felt like my life was unraveling, and every step I took to find answers only led to more questions. That night, I decided to confront her. I waited until the evening when she usually appeared and went outside. I didn't have a plan, but I couldn't keep living in fear. I had to know what she wanted, what this was all about. As I walked down the street, I saw her standing by the corner, her face partially obscured by the shadows. She looked up when I approached, and for the first time, she spoke. "You've been looking for answers," she said in a low voice, her tone almost too calm. "But you don't want to know the truth." I felt my throat tighten. "Who are you? What do you want from me?" I demanded. Her eyes flickered briefly to the diary I was clutching in my hands, then back to my face. "I'm here to keep you from making the same mistake," she said. "You found something you shouldn't have, and now the consequences will follow." "What do you mean? What's happening?" I asked, frustration bubbling up inside me. "I'm trying to protect you," she said, her eyes full of something like pity. "I've seen this happen before. The diary. It's not just a record of your life. It's a blueprint. It's a warning. The person who wrote it is still watching you, and you're not the first to be trapped by it." "Who wrote it?" I asked, barely able to keep my voice steady. "Who is this person?" The woman hesitated, then said, "The diary is a tool. The person who wrote it is not someone from your past. They're from your future." The words hit me like a ton of bricks. "What do you mean, my future?" She sighed, glancing around nervously. "I can't explain everything right now, but I've been sent to stop you. The diary is connected to an event in the future, a tragedy that you can't avoid if you keep reading it. The person who wrote it, they know everything, and they want you to follow their path, to lead you into something terrible." The more I tried to make sense of what she was saying, the less I understood. But I couldn't deny the fear in her eyes. She was afraid. And if she was telling the truth, I was in more danger than I had imagined. She looked at me one last time and whispered, "Whatever you do, stop reading that diary. The more you read, the more control it will have over you." I stood frozen in place as she walked away, disappearing into the night. I didn't know whether to follow her or run the other way. My mind was spinning, but one thing was clear. There was something more to the diary than I could understand. And now, someone from my future was trying to stop me. The next morning, I couldn't bring myself to read it again. The diary lay there on my desk, its pages beckoning me, but I was too scared to touch it. What if it really was controlling me? What if everything that had been happening, the strange woman, the eerie sense of being watched, was all part of a greater scheme I couldn't escape? But I had to know. I couldn't just walk away from this. Whatever was inside that diary had already started to change my life, and I had to face whatever truth it was trying to show me. The woman's warning echoed in my head like a drumbeat. I couldn't stop thinking about what she had said. The person who wrote it. They know everything, and they want you to follow their path. But why? Why would someone from my future want to influence my present? And what was it about the diary that had such a hold on me? Was I really being controlled by something I had no control over? My mind was a maze of questions, and I had no answers. I stared at the diary on my desk, the leather cover now seeming darker than before, almost sinister. It called to me, and despite everything I'd learned, I felt an irresistible pull to open it. Was I just paranoid? Or was the woman telling the truth? Taking a deep breath, I reached for the diary. My fingers shook as I opened the cover, and I began to flip through the pages. The further I got into it, the stranger the entries became. They no longer described things that had already happened, or even things that could happen. Now, the diary was speaking in cryptic riddles, like a warning wrapped in confusion. One entry in particular stopped me cold. It was dated in my handwriting, as if I had written it myself, just hours before I had found the diary. "Do not trust the woman. She is a shadow from the future, a memory of what could have been. Her advice will lead you into a trap. You must decide. Follow the path and lose yourself, or destroy the diary and erase it from your life forever. I felt my heart race. The entry was written in my own hand, but I hadn't written it. I couldn't have. And if I hadn't written it, then who had? That's when it hit me. The diary wasn't just a journal. It wasn't just a collection of random memories and predictions. It was some kind of artifact, a link between my past and future. It was a living document, a thread connecting me to a version of myself that hadn't yet come to pass. The woman wasn't trying to stop me from learning the truth. She was trying to protect me from becoming something I wasn't meant to be. The more I read, the more my reality seemed to bend. The lines between past, present, and future began to blur. It was as if the diary was not only predicting events, it was shaping them. Every decision I made, every word I spoke, felt like it was somehow being guided by the words I had read in that diary. I began to wonder, was I already trapped in this cycle? Had I unknowingly already sealed my fate by even reading it? I spent the next few days in a haze, barely leaving my apartment. I couldn't bring myself to put the diary down, but the more I read, the more I became convinced that something dark was at work here. The entries began to mirror events that hadn't happened yet, things that were so specific they were impossible to ignore. One entry described an interaction I was going to have with my best friend, Rachel, the very next day. It was so precise, right down to the conversation, even the tone of our voices. When I met Rachel the next day, it was like I was reading from a script, unable to stop the words from spilling out. "Rachel, you'll be the one who pushes me forward," I told her, exactly as the diary had predicted. She looked at me with concern, but nodded, as if she already knew. The sense of foreboding grew heavier with each passing day. It was becoming clear to me that the diary wasn't just about me. It was about a choice, a path that I had no idea I was already walking. Each page seemed to lead me closer to an inevitable fate. But was I really in control of my actions? Or had I been guided into making these decisions long before I'd even realized? The following week, I was back at work, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being followed. The woman from the coffee shop had disappeared for a while, but it wasn't long before she resurfaced. This time, I noticed her outside my apartment complex again, but she wasn't just standing there like she had before. She was talking to someone I didn't recognize. I couldn't hear their conversation, but I could tell it was serious. The way they were looking around, watching the building, made my stomach churn. I decided to confront her once and for all. I couldn't keep running, couldn't keep avoiding the truth. That evening, I found her standing near the entrance of my building, just as I was about to leave. This time, I wasn't afraid. I needed answers. "I don't know what's going on, but you've been following me, and I want to know why," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She looked at me with a sad, almost pitying gaze. "You still don't understand, do you?" "No," I replied, "I don't. Why have you been following me? What is it you're trying to protect me from?" She sighed, and for the first time, she seemed almost vulnerable. "I'm not following you. I'm trying to save you. You've been reading the diary, haven't you?" I nodded. "Yes, I have. And everything it says, it's coming true. It's telling me about things I'm going to do, things that haven't even happened yet." She paused, as if weighing her words. "The diary is dangerous. It's not just a journal. It's a guide. A path that has been laid out for you by someone who has already walked it. Someone who's seen what you're going to do and wants to make sure you do it." I shook my head, struggling to understand. But why would they want me to do this? Why would someone from the future want to control me like this? Her expression darkened. "Because they've already lost everything. They're trying to manipulate you into doing the same so they don't feel alone in their misery. They want you to follow their path so they can fix their past. But if you keep following the diary, if you keep making the choices it tells you to make, you'll end up like them." I felt a chill run down my spine. This was bigger than I could have imagined. The weight of the decision pressed down on me like 1,000 pounds. The truth I'd discovered, the truth about the diary, the woman, and the forces controlling my life, was overwhelming. I had already learned so much, but now I was standing at a crossroads, staring into an abyss of possibilities, each one leading to something uncertain and terrifying. The woman's warning still echoed in my mind. They want you to follow their path, so they can fix their past. But if you keep following the diary, you'll end up just like them. What did that mean? The diary was a guide, but a guide to what? What was I supposed to do with this information, this incredible power over my life and the lives of those around me? It was like I had been handed the keys to a kingdom, one that had already been built, already set in motion, by someone who wasn't even me. And yet, there was a part of me that wanted to know what came next, to see if the future that the diary predicted would truly unfold the way it said it would. I walked back to my apartment, the night growing colder, my footsteps heavier with each step. The more I thought about it, the more I realized I was standing on the precipice of a decision that could change everything. The diary was more than just a record. It was a map of everything I had done and everything I was going to do. The woman, my mysterious stalker, had been trying to protect me from something, but what exactly was she protecting me from? Was it the diary itself? Or was there something deeper, something darker lurking in the shadows of my future? I knew I couldn't ignore it anymore. I couldn't keep running from the truth. The diary had already begun to change my life. Nothing was the same anymore. The events that had unfolded, the people I had met, the things I had done, all seemed to be connected to this strange object. I had been guided without realizing it, and now I had to decide if I would continue walking down this path, or if I would take control of my life back. I sat on my couch, staring at the diary resting on the coffee table in front of me. It seemed almost peaceful now, sitting there in its worn leather cover, as if it were just a book, a simple, ordinary thing. But I knew better. This diary had shaped my past, my present, and it was poised to shape my future. My phone buzzed on the table, breaking the silence. It was a text message from Rachel. I hadn't spoken to her much since our last encounter, and the message felt oddly timed. I've been thinking, the way we've been talking, something feels off. Are you okay? I stared at the message for a long time, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. Rachel was my best friend, and yet even she was starting to sense something was wrong, but I couldn't explain it to her. I couldn't tell her that the future had already been written for me, that everything I was doing had already been planned by someone else. She wouldn't understand. I shook my head, turning my attention back to the diary. This was my problem, my decision, and I couldn't rely on anyone else to make it for me. Then, as if the universe was mocking me, the doorbell rang. I froze. I hadn't expected anyone, and my heart skipped a beat. I cautiously walked over to the door and peered through the peephole. Standing there was the woman, the mysterious woman who had been following me, the one who had warned me. She wasn't here to confront me this time. She was here to offer me one final chance. I opened the door slowly, my breath catching in my chest. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She gave me a small, sad smile. "I know you've been reading it, the diary, but it's not too late to stop. You don't have to follow it. You don't have to let it control you." I shook my head, my thoughts spinning. How can I stop? How can I not follow it? I've already seen what happens. The future has already been laid out. I can't change it. Her eyes softened, and she stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. "You can. You're not trapped in it. The diary is a tool, but it's not the tool. You have a choice. You always have had a choice." I closed the door behind her, standing there, unable to speak. I wanted to believe her, but everything I'd experienced so far, the strange encounters, the eerie accuracy of the diary's predictions, told me otherwise. How could I walk away from something that had already shaped my life so completely? The woman continued, her voice calm and steady. "The person who wrote the diary, the one who's been guiding you, they are not you. They are a version of you, a version that followed the path the diary set out. But you have the ability to change it. You have the power to stop the cycle." I stared at her, my mind racing. How? How do I change it? How do I break free? She placed a hand gently on my shoulder. "You stop reading it. You burn it. You decide that your future is not written by anyone else. It's your life, your path. The choice has always been yours." The words sank in slowly. The idea that I could choose, that I could break free from the grip the diary had on me, was almost too much to process. But then I thought about everything I had learned, everything I had felt. If I didn't burn it, if I didn't break the cycle, I was afraid I would become the very person the diary had warned me about, the version of me trapped by fate, led down a path I didn't choose. I turned to look at the diary one last time. The words, the predictions, the entries, They had all come true so far. But could I rewrite the ending? I picked up the diary. The weight of it in my hands felt different now, heavier. But the truth was clear. With a shaky breath, I walked over to the fireplace, and as I held the diary to the flames, I made my decision. I would choose. The diary caught fire, its pages curling and blackening as I watched, the flames consuming it completely. As the last page of the diary was reduced to ashes, I stood there, frozen for a moment. The air in the room seemed to shift, as if the house itself had exhaled, releasing the tension that had built up over the past few days. I wasn't sure what to expect next. Had I really just erased my future, or had I altered something much more profound? I stared at the flickering flames in the fireplace, reflecting on everything that had happened, the woman who had been following me, the diary that had shaped my life in ways I never understood, and the terrifying truth that I had nearly allowed my future to be dictated by a piece of paper. I suddenly realized that by destroying the diary, I hadn't just freed myself from its grip. I had also opened a new chapter in my life, one that was entirely mine to write. But the world didn't stop. Life went on, and so did I. I went about my daily routine, meeting friends, going to work, living what seemed like a normal life. But deep down, I felt a nagging thought at the back of my mind. What if I was being watched still? What if the future had already been set into motion, and the diary was only a small part of the plan? It wasn't until a week later that I ran into Rachel again. We had been close friends for years, but after the events surrounding the diary, I had distanced myself from her. She was concerned, and I could see it in her eyes when she asked how I was doing. "You've been acting really strange lately," she said, her brow furrowed in worry. "I mean, after everything, you've barely spoken to anyone. Are you okay?" I nodded, forcing a smile. "Yeah, I'm fine. Just trying to figure things out." Rachel didn't seem convinced, but she didn't press me further. She just looked at me, the concern still visible. But she didn't ask about the diary or the woman. She didn't need to. It hit me then. I was free. Free from the diary, from the woman, and from the haunting certainty that my future had already been written. The choices I made now were mine and mine alone. I was no longer a character in a story. I was the author of my own. I don't know what the future holds, but I know one thing. I have the power to shape it. The past can be a powerful influence, but the decisions we make today can redefine everything about our tomorrow. So, what would you have done if you were in my shoes? Would you have destroyed the diary, or would you have followed the path it laid out for you? Let me know what you think in the comments. Do you believe in fate, or is life really just about the choices we make? If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with your friends. The future is yours to create. Just remember to make the choice that feels right for you.